It is my pleasure to welcome you to today's Washington Update Luncheon with Congressman Mo Brooks. Thank you for taking the time to join us today for this important meeting. And it's important to note that your support of events like this is one of the things that makes our community so strong.
Mo and his family moved to Huntsville in 1963 when his father took a job on Redstone Arsenal. He's a graduate of Grissom High School, where he graduated in 1972, and he was all-city in baseball and an active member on 2 state championship debate teams. He graduated from Duke University in 3 years with a double major in political science and economics, with highest honors in economics. And in 1978, he graduated from the University of Alabama Law School. Mo began his career in public service in 1982 as a member of the Alabama House of Representatives, where he served until 1991. He was consistently recognized by pro-business groups like the Alabama Taxpayers Defense Fund and the Alabama Alliance of Business and Industry for his business-friendly voting record. Mo was appointed Madison County District Attorney in 1991 and resumed his public service in 1996 when he was elected to the Madison County Commission. He continued to serve on the commission until his election to Congress. Mo maintained a private law practice during his years on the commission and served 2 stints as a special assistant attorney general for Attorney Generals Jeff Sessions and Bill Pryor. Mo serves on several key committees in Congress, including Armed Services and its Strategic Forces and Oversight and Investigation subcommittees, the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, where he is the vice chairman of the Space Subcommittee, the Foreign Affairs Committee and its Terrorism, Nonproliferation, and Trade Subcommittee, and Asia and the Pacific Subcommittee. Congressman Brooks is beginning his 2nd term in Congress, being the only Republican ever to win re-election to this 5th district seat. Just this month, Congressman Brooks was presented with Nucor Steel's Man of Steel Award for his support of American manufacturing. And last year, he was named the 2011 Fighting Freshman of the Year out of the 93 freshmen by the U.S. Business and Industry Council for his efforts to promote American job creation. He founded and currently co-chairs the Army Aviation Caucus, a forum in which members of Congress, staff, and Army leadership raise awareness for Army aviation. The caucus includes 46 congressmen, and it's one of the most active caucuses on Capitol Hill. Mo, we appreciate your time today and your service to our community and the nation, and we're grateful for your leadership and the support of our economic development efforts. So please help me welcome Congressman Mo Brooks.
It's an honor to serve as your congressman. Very much appreciate that opportunity. My remarks are going to be broken into 6 parts. First, a refresher on America's financial situation. Second, Washington's response to that situation. Third, events of the last 4 months, and there have been significant ones. Fourth, upcoming issues, and you've got a pretty good idea as to what those are. Fifth, solutions that I think we need to advocate in Washington, D.C. 6, questions from the audience. Forgive me for doing so. I'm going to be covering a lot. Normally I speak more extemporaneously, but given the time constraints, I'm going to try to keep as much as possible to my prepared remarks. Over the past 2 years, as you are coming to recognize, deficits and debt have driven almost all of the Washington debate, almost all Washington issues. Notwithstanding our situation, America will rise to the challenge, in my judgment, if the American people fully understand the challenge that we face and they are thereby motivated to corrective action. In that vein, let me share with you a deficit chart. It's a little bit of a progression from what you've seen before. As you can see, we have just finished our 4th consecutive year of trillion-dollar deficits. On the plus side, FY 2012's deficit is about $200 billion less than FY 2011, so we are making some progress in that regard. On the downside, our total debt now is $16.5 trillion and still going skyward at an unsustainable pace. Now, let me next share with you the cost of these deficits and accumulated debt. In fiscal year 2012, America's debt service was $251 billion, according to the GAO, at record low interest rates that are roughly half the historical norm. To put $251 billion in perspective, that is roughly 5 times what the federal government spends on transportation. That is roughly 14 times the NASA budget. Those kinds of things that we could be doing with that money gone in perpetuity unless somehow or another we're able to reduce that debt burden and free up that debt service charge for more productive things. On January the 17th, this did not get much publicity, if at all, but the Comptroller General of the United States sent a letter to President Obama. Now keep in mind, this is from the accounting realm, and you folks are accountants out there, you know they tend to be a little bit on the cautious side in using their language. In that letter to President Obama, the Comptroller General summarized America's financial statements. And this is a direct quote from Comptroller General Dodaro, and he stated, the comprehensive long-term fiscal projections for America show that, absent policy changes, the federal government continues to face an unsustainable path. Over the long term, the structural imbalance between spending and revenue will lead to continued growth of debt held by the public as a share of GDP. This means the current structure of the federal budget is unsustainable. Now, those are pretty strong words coming from the Comptroller General to his boss, the President of the United States. So be mindful of that circumstance. Now, let me mention about Washington's response for a moment. As emphasized by our Comptroller General, our response to 4 consecutive $1 trillion deficits and a $16.5 trillion debt has been inadequate. Our responses, quite frankly, are unsustainable. In 2011, we tried to pass a balanced budget constitutional amendment. Unfortunately, it failed. 98% of Republicans voted for it in the House. 89% of the Democrats voted no against it in the House. Since you need 2/3 vote, those numbers did not come up to the total that was needed. That was one solution. Quite frankly, that would not have solved things short term, but it would have protected us 10 and 20 and 30 years down the road. Let me share with you an observation by Admiral Mike Mullen, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he made this testimony in 2010 to Armed Services Committee and also in 2011. Quote, I think the biggest threat we have to our national security is our debt. Keep in mind, he's making this statement in 2010 and 2011. Unfortunately, a year later, he was proven to be very prophetic. Because a year later, in August of 2011, Washington passed the Budget Control Act. The BCA raised America's debt ceiling by more than $2 trillion. The BCA cut spending by roughly $160 billion per year for 10 years. That's good. Unfortunately, the BCA singled out national defense for disproportionate cuts. Many people don't realize it comes in 2 parts. People are focused on sequestration. That's part 2. The first part was a cut of $48 billion per year over 10 years to national defense. No other part of the budget was hit. So bear that in mind. That's the beginning. Also bear in mind that when you add another $60 billion a year to national defense cuts, roughly $100 billion out of a total of $160 billion, that means that national defense, which is only 16% of federal government spending, is taking 60% of the hit. That's disproportionate. The result of this disproportionate attack on defense funding, according to Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta, House Armed Services Committee, and others, is that our military will be adversely impacted in a major way. We will have the smallest number of uniformed personnel since before World War II. We will have the smallest number of operational aircraft in the United States Air Force in the history of the Air Force. We will have the smallest number of operational naval vessels in the United States Navy since World War I. Those are dramatic effects from these kind of disproportionate cuts. And as Admiral Mike Mullen feared, no enemy will have stripped America's defense as badly as we will have done ourselves to our own country. In Washington, there is a lot of finger-pointing going on right now. And let me be perfectly candid. Sequestration and these defense cuts were Democrat President Barack Obama's idea. However, Republican House Speaker John Boehner pressured Republicans in the House to vote for it. and Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid supported it. Democrats and Republicans both voted for it and voted against it. It's about as bipartisan as you can get. And for those of you who like compromise, well, the Budget Control Act should be exactly what you want, because it is a product of compromise. There are those in Washington who wanted to severely cut national defense, and my side of the aisle compromised by letting it happen. I realized sequestration's risk to America's national security immediately upon reading the Budget Control Act. Despite White House, House leadership, Senate leadership pressure to the contrary, I joined Senators Shelby, Senator Sessions, and one other Republican House member from the Alabama delegation in voting to stop sequestration dead in its tracks in August of 2011. Unfortunately, we're in the minority, and it's now the law of the land. In 2012, the House voted numerous times to try to fix sequestration by eliminating it or minimizing its impact. We passed bills in the House. Unfortunately, those bills went to the Senate, and they never saw the light of day, not one vote. Not only that, the Senate did not counter with a solution of their own. So here we are. I am working with House Armed Services Committee Chairman Buck McKeon on legislation to fix this problem. I've co-sponsored other legislation to fix this problem, but it does not look like the House leadership is going to let it come up for a vote between now and March 1st. Unfortunately, and as of last week, the House leadership refuses to let any sequestration bills come to the House floor for a vote. Now, things are fluid, so that may change, but that's where the House leadership was last week. Why, you may ask? That's a puzzling position. Well, it's because the House has acted time and time again and passed legislation that would impact this problem. It goes to the Senate, we take political hits because there's no pain-free solution, and then nothing happens. So the House leadership's position is this: it is time for the Senate to pass a bill, and if they pass a bill, the House will consider it, which is inconsistent with the way the Senate has acted with respect to the bills that the House has passed. Let me move on to the last 4 months. I'm going to start with the November elections. In November, President Obama was reelected. In November, the Senate remained in Democrat hands. In the House, American voters gave Republicans their second most number of victories in 6 decades. Only 2010 was better. The public elected a president and Senate who seek wealth distribution, more regulations, more taxes, less defense spending, and more welfare spending. Yet the public at the same time elected a House that believes national defense is the #1 priority of the federal government, and that free enterprise, a smaller non-defense federal government, and lower taxes and fewer regulations are the ticket to economic prosperity. Each party believes that the other party's solutions are the cause of the problem. Washington is a perfect reflection of the American people. And in 2012, the public elected gridlock. I wish I could say something different, but that's where we are. After the elections, Washington faced huge issues. First was the fiscal cliff. The fiscal cliff evolves out of the Bush tax cuts, so I'm going to mention them for a moment. The Bush tax cuts emulated the Ronald Reagan economic policies that had served us so well. In the 3 years following the Bush tax cuts, unemployment dropped from 6.3%, that was thought to be bad back then, in 2003 to 4.4% in 2006 in just 3 years. 7 million American jobs were created from 2003 to 2006, again in the 3 years thereafter. Paradoxically to some, these tax cuts created robust economic growth that cut America's deficit by 60%, from $413 billion in FY04 to $161 billion in FY07. By every economic measure, the Bush tax cuts were a spectacular economic success. Unfortunately, they were temporary, and they were set by Congress to come up for a vote on January 1st of this year. This was Washington politics at its worst. In less than 24 hours, you had a major piece of legislation get introduced in the Senate on a national holiday at 1:30 in the morning. 15 minutes later, the senators are expected to vote. That afternoon, the Congressional Budget Office tells us that it will increase our deficit by $4 trillion over the next decade, and that it increases spending, not cuts it, and then it passes the House later that afternoon in such a short period of time that no American citizen had a reasonable amount of time, on a national holiday, mind you, to read this legislation, to understand it, to vet it, and to get back with their elected officials in Washington about its contents. I was pleased to join 5 other Alabama congressmen and Senator Shelby in voting no on this piece of legislation, given the way it was done. We next had the Hurricane Sandy relief bill. Very briefly, it increases our debt by more than $60 billion. We were not financially responsible again. Then we came to the debt ceiling bill that we just passed, where the debt ceiling was suspended. That's going to increase our debt probably in the neighborhood of $350 to $450 billion by May 19th, at which time a new debt ceiling will be imposed. Whatever we owe at that point in time is the new debt ceiling. We have another debt ceiling crisis that's going to hit us. I joined Senator Sessions in voting against that piece of legislation. Deadlines, March 1st, well, that's sequestration. Plan on it. I don't know of anyone in Washington who thinks there's a 1 in 10 chance that it will not happen. March 31st, funding bill runs out. We're going to have to pass a continuing resolution. I think the House will probably pass a bill that will help restore some of the defense cuts, but I do not know how that will fare in the United States Senate. May 19th, again, that's the trigger for the expiration of another debt ceiling. Solutions. We have 3. We can raise taxes. To raise taxes, you have to double the tax rate on every American that now pays them to come up with enough to eliminate the deficit. You want to cut spending? Cut out all the discretionary spending, and that's enough to do it. That means no defense and no ABC, alphabet soup agencies, FBI, CIA, no Congress, no White House. That's all discretionary spending. Third option, grow revenues by growing the economy. That's what I advocate. In that vein, the economic policies of Reagan and Obama are very instructive. Both Obama and Reagan inherited a 7.3% unemployment rate that was getting worse. Reagan, as a reminder, inherited a 13.5% inflation rate and a 15% prime interest rate. Imagine the impact of that on housing and business. Both presidents inherited a recession. The previous year, the economy had contracted. Which policies worked? On taxes, President Reagan cut marginal tax rates. President Obama hiked income and estate taxes on some of us and added numerous Obamacare taxes that you're starting to see. On federal government regulations, President Reagan slashed them. President Obama has added over 11,000 pages of new regulatory burdens. In that vein, we have the cost, according to the SBA, is $10,585 per employee per year for the regulatory burdens that are now imposed by Washington. President Reagan restrained government growth. Obama added Obamacare. See that chart? That's the bureaucratic chart associated with managing Obamacare, a Washington Employment Act of epic proportions. The bottom line, under President Obama from 2009 through 2012, America's gross domestic product grew an anemic 3% in real dollars. That's after adjustment for inflation. Further, America's economic future is uncertain. America suffers from 2 straight months of worsening unemployment rates. We've just had a recessionary 2012 fourth quarter. Hopefully the final numbers will change it, but the first numbers from the Department of Commerce say that's recessionary, a contraction of GDP. We have $4 trillion deficits, $4 trillion deficits consecutive, and we have a $16.5 trillion debt. Under Reagan, same period of time, from 81 to 84, GDP grew 13% in real dollar terms. By 1985, America was in the middle of 80 consecutive months of economic growth. Reagan's tax relief, regulatory relief, and free enterprise policies produced a vibrant economy. History reveals the economic path that we should follow. Unfortunately, we're not. Even more troubling, current economic policies tend to be the exact opposite of those implemented that worked so well in the 1980s, and for that matter, in the early part of the last decade. Now, people often ask why I fight for the principles that I fight for. The answer, quite frankly, is love of country. We are a remarkable country, and love for family. Now, my daughter's family owes $275,000, their share of the federal debt. I owe it to them and to you to keep tax burdens reasonable and save all of us from a debt that risks America with a debilitating insolvency and bankruptcy. Now, on the positive side, America's challenges are great, but you know what? They often have been, and we are a people that have risen to the challenges. If we will just learn from history, if American voters will become educated on policies and disregard personalities and charisma, if we will focus on what works and doesn't work, then we will do as we have done before and we will rise to the occasion. But it's up to us, the American people, the American voters, to do that. I want to thank you for the opportunity to serve as your congressman.